It is a big, ugly, awful, incredible story that people don't know what to do with that, bottom line.
The court abducted my child without any ground. I have the clean record. I am a licensed nurse. I take care of people, make sure my patients get well. I do teaching. I am a good mother. On the other hand, the father have history of violence. He have more than one restraining orders. The court gave him sole custody and placed me on 2 hours supervised visitation, 2 hours per week.
No evidence was presented to change custody. There was no reason for them to change custody. There was nothing presented that would even carry any weight to change the custody. As a parent, the only thing you want to do is protect your children. And this legal system now has put me in a place where I have no power. They put the power in the hands of the psychologist, the kid's attorney, the evaluator, and they're essentially trying to take me completely out of my children's lives.
When a child alleges sexual abuse specifically, but also lately it's become any kind of abuse, domestic violence or child abuse, and a parent asks the family court for protection from the other parent for that child, often the allegations are considered by the court or ancillary professionals in terms of parental alienation syndrome.
Parental alienation is junk science. Parental alienation was a concept invented by some fellow back east, and his theory was that parents could alienate a child from the other parent.
The family courts loved the idea. They didn't realize at first that it wasn't based on any research. And they just thought, oh, this is an easy answer. It explains away these horrible cases that we don't want to have to deal with. Because if we think about whether abuse happened or not, we have to deal with evidence, we have to deal with trauma, we have to deal with horrible ideas, and we have to take a stand and say whether or not it happened.
In 2003, the American Prosecutors Research Institute identified use of PAS as a deliberate means to obstruct prosecution of abuse cases. It's a completely bogus legal defense of child molesters that's being used in family courts across the country.
And it's kind of an idea that has been completely debunked and is laughed at in other contexts, but in family law it holds sway. It's the reigning paradigm.
I went into court with the idea that we were going to bring two sides before a judge and they were going to come up with a reasonable conclusion to whatever, or the issue at hand. And I found out that was 180 degrees from what I was entering into.
If you have a contested custody case in California, you have to go to mediation. You have to go to county mediation and see if you can resolve the issue there. And in some counties, mediation is confidential, and they just try to help you work out your issues and come to a custody agreement. And if you don't, you go fresh to the court. And in other counties, it's called recommending mediation. And there you go meet with the mediators. You try to work out your issues, and if you don't, the mediator can make a recommendation to the judge about what he or she thinks should be the custodial status of each parent.
And the real problem is that mediator ends up deciding your case. And that's not how the system is supposed to work. And so when the mediator decides your case, whoever loses is, quote, disgruntled, and they should be not because of the outcome, but because they never got a trial.
The court mediator failed to follow the local rules and the law. She broke every single rule in the book. She doesn't read the file, she doesn't read the pleading, she doesn't know the history of, my case.
We have mediators in Marin County who flat out lie in their reports and have been caught at it by the appellate court, and the trial courts have been reversed because of it. And they're still working in Marin County, and they're still writing reports, still making recommendations.
The people that I talk to across the United States, they say that each state has its judge, individual rogue judge, or its individual rogue court, or the whole court system is a mess, does not protect children. So it's a national and an international problem.
It's who you know and how much money you have. It doesn't have anything to do with the law. It doesn't have anything to do with justice.
The financial incentives are to keep these situations going. There's no financial incentive to settle the case. The evaluators make a ton of money. The attorneys for the minor and the family court attorneys are guaranteed payment for, if the child's 3 years old, for the next 15 years. Because they never settle, these cases never settle.
If a child is placed in unsupervised visitation or full custody with the person that they've identified as the perpetrator of abuse, you know instantly that their protective parent is never going to just walk away and stop fighting for their safety.
There's a pattern to the cases. What we found is we can finish someone's sentence when they call us. We know what the next step in the pattern is.
If there's money in the family, they'll appoint an evaluator. And first it will go to court mediation. If there's enough money, they'll recommend private mediation. Typically, they'll appoint a parenting coordinator, a parenting coach, a therapist for each family member. And the amounts that these people can charge are not regulated at all.
All these people that are making hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars statewide off of the whole family law machine, they want the court to make those orders because those orders are what get them paid and it's the reason for their existence.
Much of the money comes from the litigants. That's the chilling part of it.
That's money. That's money buying something we label as truth and justice, where it's not money buying truth or justice. It's money buying, in some cases, lies, really damaging lies with long-term consequences.
The first day I met the custody evaluator, I had this overwhelming feeling that she had already sort of made up her mind about this custody evaluation. My daughter began to talk about things that had me very concerned, which I reported to the evaluator. And one evening, right before taking a bath, she was naked on the floor and put my necklace up to her vagina and said that the snake goes into the hole. And on another occasion, she was sitting on her knees in the bathroom and began to bounce up and down on her knees. And she had a tight fist as if she was holding something. And I said, well, what are you doing bouncing? And she said, I'm on his lap. I have to hold the snake until it dies. After a short time, the evaluator did a home visit at my home and the father's home. And apparently my daughter's father and her grandfather purchased a snake to make it seem like my daughter had a snake, a pet snake, the whole time. The evaluator, when I met her next, she said, see, they're just into nature, and this is basically all your imagination. And I said, well, really, tell me when did the father get the snake for my daughter? And she said 2 weeks ago. And I reminded the evaluator that this report was made to my attorney and to CPS six weeks prior. The evaluator eventually issued a report, and the report basically said that I was a danger to my child and that my child should be taken from me. Given sole custody to the father.
I would say we're seeing an emergency here. When these children are being damaged, they're treating like throwaway kids. They're disposable. Their welfare is disregarded entirely.
The momentum is building as more and more of these children are being placed with abusers, and some of them grow up, some of them leave, run away, age out of their system, and they're finding each other and they're beginning to speak out publicly. And they're going to be a very strong force to be reckoned with. The people involved in those cases are certainly available to talk to the media.
The courts should not bear this burden by themselves, nor should any single mediator or profession. It's too serious.
What we believe and what we've suggested to the legislature is to have a multidisciplinary panel look at these cases for a second look to see if the child is safe. Have no other agenda than that.
No one will fix it until the people who are making policy decide to fix it. And they're not going to decide to fix it until pressure is brought to bear on them to fix it. And that pressure has to come from the public, it has to come from the press, it has to come from our elected officials, it has to come from the oversight entities, it has to come from law enforcement. That's responsible government. That's the duty of our elected officials to make sure that the citizens are protected.
I think that the Congress is going to eventually have to come to grips with the fact that this is a national problem.